I ended up sliding across the floor, and then when it rolled back, I came back. And I ended up under a table, and the table was pinning my leg down there, and I was up to my neck in water.
This isn't just another maritime mishap. It's a chilling reminder of how the smallest oversight can push a $400 million cruise liner and more than 1,000 lives to the very brink. Minutes from disaster, the Viking Sky lost all power in the middle of a raging storm. Over 1,300 souls on board, engines dead, and the ship drifting helplessly, just 100 meters from the jagged Norwegian coast. A single mayday stood between survival and a tragedy to rival the Titanic. But why did a state-of-the-art cruise ship come so close to sinking? Was it just bad luck or a chain of hidden failures that had been unfolding for years? Were passengers misled about the risks, or did corporate oversight nearly doom them all? Tonight, we unravel how one of the safest forms of travel almost became a mass grave, and the uncomfortable truths cruise lines don't want you to know. The Viking Sky drifted helplessly toward the rocky Norwegian shore, dangerously close to sinking. The captain issued a desperate mayday call, and experts braced for a disaster that could rival the Titanic. This is the story of shocking oversights, how the Viking Sky cruise ship nearly ended in catastrophe on March 23, 2019. The Viking Sky was sailing through the notorious Hustadvika Bay when its engines suddenly shut down. For hours, the vessel had endured brutal 6-meter waves, and now, in the height of the storm, it was completely immobilized. As 90-amp winds tore at the ship, the crew fought frantically to restart the engines. Yet this luxury cruise liner should never have come so close to destruction. As we'll see, the crisis had been years in the making. The Viking Sky is one of 6 ships owned by Viking Ocean Cruises, a company known for luxury voyages showcasing Arctic scenery and the Northern Lights. But Viking Ocean Cruises is an entertainment company, not a naval operator. Once ships are built by the Italian firm Fincantieri, their maritime operations are managed by Wilhelmsen, a Norwegian shipping services company. The Viking Sky was considered state-of-the-art when it launched in 2017. One would assume all technical documentation was in order, yet conflicting reports suggested otherwise. In 2016, Wilhelmsen engineers working on a sister vessel discovered they were missing vital information. The engine manufacturer had failed to provide proper guidelines for oil levels and alarms in the sump tanks. It was an extraordinary oversight for a $400 million cruise ship, especially because its diesel engines also generated electricity. If the engines failed mid-voyage, the Viking Sky would lose both power and propulsion. For years, thousands of passengers unknowingly boarded ships that engineers did not fully know how to maintain. To make matters worse, the Viking Sky could carry 930 passengers and 465 crew, but was still technically classified as a small ship. This classification raised troubling questions. Were there enough lifeboats for everyone? History had already shown us with the Titanic what happens when lifeboat capacity falls short. Passengers, mostly retirees, were unaware of these risks as they set off on a 12-day cruise along Norway's coast, beginning in Bergen. The route would take them north to Tromsø, then south through the treacherous Hustadvika Bay, a stretch infamous for shallow reefs, sudden storms, and brutal seas. The first week passed smoothly. On March 21st, passengers enjoyed their stop in Tromsø. But trouble was already looming. Severe weather warnings were issued for the coming days, prompting rival cruise lines to cancel their sailings. On top of that, one of Viking Sky's 4 diesel-electric generators, DG3, was offline due to a faulty turbocharger. Waiting in Tromsø for spare parts would mean falling behind schedule. The ship also faced a shortage of certified pilots, the expert navigators required for Norway's dangerous coastal waters. One pilot on board was only licensed up to Kristiansund, while his replacement would not join until after Hustadvika, the most dangerous part of the voyage. Despite these issues, the captain and pilots believed they could safely continue. A technician on board would attempt to repair the generator later in Stavanger. Against regulations, the ship left Tromsø with one generator out of service, reducing its safety margin if others failed. 3 hours after departure, an alarm warned of low oil in DG2. It cleared itself shortly afterward, so no further action was taken. Conditions were calm at this point, though winds steadily increased. By morning, the captain canceled the planned stop in Bodø, citing safety concerns. Instead, they set course for Stavanger. Throughout the day, winds intensified. By nightfall, 6-meter waves battered the ship, forcing the captain to slow speed. Passengers endured a rough night, unaware that the worst was yet to come. By early morning, more alarms signaled low oil in DG4. Over 150 warnings flashed in the system within hours, including multiple oil alerts. Engineers acknowledged and cleared the alarms, but failed to investigate properly. Manual checks later confirmed levels were normal. In reality, the ship had been running with insufficient oil for over 24 hours. By midday, the Viking Sky entered Hustadvika Bay. Waves surged to 7 meters, and winds escalated into a full storm, gusting over 90 miles per hour. Despite completing a heavy weather checklist, the sump tanks had not been topped up. Worse, the tanks themselves were about 40% smaller than required by regulation. The engines were on the brink of failure. Suddenly, alarms blared. DG4 and DG1 lost power from low oil pressure, quickly followed by DG2. Within minutes, the Viking Sky suffered a total blackout. The stabilizers retracted, causing the ship to roll violently. Passengers panicked as lights flickered and furniture crashed around them. The captain declared, "Mayday! Mayday, mayday, mayday! This is Viking Sky. Engines failed in storm conditions, 100 meters from the rocks. Request immediate assistance." The Norwegian Coast Guard launched a massive rescue effort. Anchors were dropped, but in the massive swell, they failed to hold. The ship continued drifting toward shore. Inside, chaos reigned as up to 1,000 alarms overwhelmed engineers. Critical warnings were buried under minor alerts. Engineers eventually identified the oil problem and tried to restart systems, but with poor training in blackout recovery, they struggled to follow correct procedures. Meanwhile, passengers were ordered to muster stations. Despite fear, most remained calm. As rescue helicopters began winching passengers 2 at a time, another disaster struck. A giant wave smashed through windows and ripped a heavy door from its hinges, flooding the ship with freezing seawater. Passengers were thrown across rooms, some seriously injured, including one with a broken neck. For hours, helicopters battled brutal winds to evacuate people. In total, 460 passengers were airlifted. Miraculously, as engineers slowly restored generators, tugboats reached the scene and guided the Viking Sky into deeper waters. By the morning of March 24th, with calmer seas, the ship limped toward Molde under tow. All 1,373 passengers and crew survived. 18 were injured, 1 seriously. The chairman of Viking Ocean Cruises personally apologized and issued full refunds.
It could have been a very bad situation, and I think we are very grateful for the captain.
Investigators later concluded the disaster stemmed from low oil levels, compounded by undersized sump tanks, poor maintenance, and flawed decision-making. The choice to sail from Tromsø despite regulations, inadequate pilot staffing, and poor training in blackout procedures all contributed. In the end, Viking Ocean Cruises and Wilhelmsen were forced to update training, overhaul safety protocols, and redesign fuel systems. It was a narrow escape from catastrophe, proof of how quickly luxury can turn to terror at sea. And while the cruise industry remains one of the safest forms of travel, the Viking Sky's ordeal is a reminder that even modern giants are vulnerable when oversight fails. And so the Viking Sky returned to port, a battered survivor, its passengers alive, but forever changed. What was sold as a voyage of luxury became a night of terror, minutes from disaster. That contrast between champagne glasses and Mayday calls is why this story must be remembered. At its heart, the tragedy was not that the ship nearly sank, but that it never should have come so close. Oversights, missing documents, ignored warnings. How could a $400 million vessel sailing under the banner of modern safety stumble on errors so familiar to history? We think of the Titanic as a lesson carved in stone, yet more than a century later, have we truly learned anything? And here's the uncomfortable question. If this storm had ended differently, if 1,300 lives had been lost, would the world remember Viking Sky alongside the Titanic or quietly bury it as an inconvenient truth for the cruise industry? In the end, the Viking Sky's escape was a miracle. But history does not move forward on miracles. It moves on choices. And the question remains, will the next choice at sea bring safety or tragedy? Drop your thoughts below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.